incident because I was in a voice chat with Booksmarts. We were in a Discord channel. I think we were just like fucking playing Deep Rock Galactic or something like that. And Booksmart saw Max's tweet about how he had soured on their discussion and the thumbnail really upset him. And Booksmarts was like really upset by that. And he was actually convinced that Max was trying to farm drama, that Max was being dishonest and trying to farm drama. And apparently, I guess there was some like stream conversation right after that where Max said like, uh, he represented himself in that conversation differently than he did in our private conversations. And Booksmart was like, we've never had a private conversation. Like he's saying this, but he's like, look at our Twitter DMs. Our Twitter DMs are literally 3 lines. Like, how's next Tuesday? That's good. Okay, see you then, or something like that. I don't
Okay.
even know if it was that. I don't even know if it was that. So Booksmarts was convinced that Max was just like trying to farm drama. Booksmarts really wanted to be friends with Max. So I remember I hit up Max. This was between Booksmarts conversation and mine, and I said, "Hey, like here's this. I think there's some confusion happening. Like Booksmarts didn't mean to like do this thing or whatever. I just thought you should know. Like this is my experience. I was in a private conversation with Booksmarts. Like he really wanted to be friends with you. He wants to know if there's like a bridge that could be mended or whatever." I don't remember exactly how the private conversation went, but it went something like that. Max basically just said, "No bueno, it's not happening," and I was just like, "Okay, like I've said what I've said, and like you've said what you've said. I have nothing more to do or say here." So I think when our conversation happened, I think Max was suspicious that I was going to make our conversation about how Max is like a bad guy and how Max is unreasonable and Booksmarts is right. I think he was suspicious that I was going to like defend my friend and make him out to be the bad guy or something like that. And like when I think back on that
As people do.
conversation, whatever, maybe, I don't know. Like I think this is emblemized by the fact that like Max is the one. I said for 2 pages about how I did not want to turn our conversation into litigating the drama with me and Booksmarts, and he's the one that like Max launched into that in our conversation. We talked about it for a long time, and he did not even remember that I like asked him extensively not to talk about it, and it was only a couple hours before, you know.
I
So
agree with that.
I understand Max has a lot of stress, but when I think back about that conversation now, that's how I think about it. Is that like Max was really suspicious of me, I think, and the whole thing was him just being on guard because he thought I was gonna like try to fuck him up over book smarts, and that was the conversation, was him explaining for book smarts.
Yeah, I actually I noted in here that I thought that he was really particularly guarded in the conversation. I have to ask you one clarifying question about something that you said, because if what I think you said is right, then I think I misunderstood something big time. Are you the reason Destiny talked to Mr. Girl?
Not at all. Not at all.
Okay.
No, I talked to Destiny between his first chat with Mr. Girl and his second, just to like put it out there because everybody was talking about how Max was a bad guy. I don't think I had any impact at all on the
Okay.
Destiny Mr. Girl dynamic. Okay, I'm not making that claim at all. I'm just I think this was brought up because like people were out for Max's blood after their first conversation, and he went
Yeah.
on to like really try to poison the well for Destiny or try to make the case to Destiny that Max shouldn't be talked to. And I just came on immediately at like just to show that I had interest in talking to Max and that I was like a fan of Max from the very beginning.
Gotcha. Yeah, I have a little bit of the timeline in the beginning, I guess, mismatched. I found out from Chud too that there's a couple of the videos that dropped in the very beginning of Max's career that I thought came out at a different time because of how they came to me. I thought, say, assume that chronologically they came out in the order in which I saw them because I live on YouTube and Twitch, and I thought I was just getting them as they came. So that's something I'm gonna have to look into. So,
Okay.
so when the thing that I noted, like right in the beginning of your guys' conversation, like as soon as you guys started talking, which is easy to say now because I've watched who knows how many hours of Mr. Girl's content, I get pretty good at reading the body language. He seemed really guarded from the start, and I think that you asked him how long he's been streaming for, and like you guys exchanged like how long we've been streaming for information, and he said, "Well, I'm gonna school ya." I like almost flinched at that, and I think that he was pretty. And I'm not saying that's your fault, but I think that really brought up the shield. He was like took that as a very aggressive move, which
Yeah,
is
like
unusual for him now.
just sure to give some background. So we were scheduled to talk on a given day. I think it was a Tuesday in maybe late January or early February. and then I had to cancel it. It was the talk I was looking forward to out of like all the talks that I had had recently. It was a talk that I was really looking forward to, but
Sure.
I get migraines, and my migraines were so bad that week. I had to cancel because there was no way that I could have had this conversation. It was really, really bad. And like I remember how bummed I was because it was like, it was like the conversation that I was looking forward to for a week or however. I think we had to schedule it a week or 2 weeks in advance. And when I had to cancel, I was really bummed. And I basically said to Max, like, I don't know how long I'm gonna be gone, but you're gonna be the first person that knows when I come back because like that's I want to have this conversation, right? So I was excited to have this conversation from the start. And I understand now, in hindsight, that, maybe that interaction or something like that. Maybe it looks like I was trying to achieve dominance early in the conversation. I was really just trying to like tell jokes or like say something to lighten things up or start some, whatever, friendly barbs or something like that. Cause he seemed like that was his type of humor.
Yeah, and I know you well enough to know that, and I know him well enough to know that reaction was like very. I don't know if I've ever seen him recoil like that before, but it was streaming was still really new. I think he was just never quite dropped the guard yet at all in any conversation. I don't guess I don't think you were being aggressive or shitty or anything like that, but I think it's easy for me to put myself in a headspace where I would take it that way if I was in the same spot.
Sometimes I don't think I think I take for granted my age and like my general demeanor and stuff. I am kind of aggressive and I am like kind of a debate bro. And I think like sometimes I don't, I really it just kind of flies under my radar how I can do things that are perceived as really aggressive and how that can come off for people. Like, Booksmarts has told me before, like sometimes you get really scary on these like panels when it looks like you start taking something seriously. And I'm like, damn, like fuck, that's literally just me like showing concern towards something. If I furrow my brow, I think, maybe I'm just not giving credit to dark features or whatever it is, age or the way that I represent myself normally, how it can be a departure from that. I don't know. Like, I don't mean for things to come off as overly aggressive, but I don't feel like they are. But I understand how maybe other people can feel like this guy's turning on me or something.
Yeah, and I I don't want to drone too long on that, but I think too, like when you did it, you played the jokey part really good. You like kind of like threw your hands up and shoulders back. But if you're on your guard, I guess that's kind of scary. Uh, and
Sure.
I feel bad for both of you for that whole thing, and me. So I really wanted it to be cool. Did you see any of his stuff before he had talked to Destiny or Bausch, or did you see him on
Nope.
there and
Destiny
then?
was, yep.
Okay.
Destiny was my introduction to Mr. Girl.
After that, did you go back and check out his stuff?
A couple of videos. Yeah. My wife and I watched one of his videos, the My Orgasm Is Not Your Responsibility.
That was a good one. I think not a lot of people think about things in that context. That one was particularly interesting when I saw it. He kind of does the. I was talking to somebody about how like comedy works, and it almost kind of Mr. Girl's really good at doing like the Louis C.K. thing where he says a thing that sounds insane and then tells you the answer why, and that sounds crazy too, and then he splits it up and fills in the middle between those two statements with things that kind of sound really nutty, and they keep getting nuttier. Then eventually it comes around and connects them in like a really nice way, to where it's like a fun surprise, like, oh, okay, I guess I don't disagree with you the way that I thought that I did. And I think I really like that.
Okay, I said from the beginning, like I feel like I kind of figured out, or I had at the time, felt like I figured out, that like the gimmick was, this guy takes a really really treacherous path to reach a pretty milk toast conclusion, like a mundane conclusion. He goes up Highway One to end up in like a soft, verdant field or something like that, like a fertile valley that's safe and warm or whatever, but not particularly surprising or anything like that. Yeah. I think that's true. Well, I don't know if that's the Louis C.K. thing. I do think that there's a thing that happens in like sort of philosopher comedy, like the George Carlin school of comedy, where you sort of dissect social norms and sort of showcase the absurdity of things that we normally take for granted. I think Max kind of does the opposite thing, where he tries to make the case that really absurd or bizarre things are normal, but then like the conclusion that comes out of them doesn't really connect with those examples, but is also not disagreeable.
Oh,
Like
That's
the
that's
whole Mr. Girl's Whatever You Want Emporium, right? Like, okay, here's this really wild example where you're forcing me to imagine strip clubs with robot 14-year-old girls or something like that. And the conclusion is, um, that like children can be sexualized, right? That there's harm in sexualizing children, right? Because it can
Mhm.
end up working. That the harm in sexualizing children is that it can end up working and getting people to be attracted to minors or whatever the hell. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a milquetoast conclusion.
Um, but when a lot of the push, sure, I think that that's a really obvious thing that in this space people weren't willing to admit, and he was kind of getting hung out to dry for pointing out to begin with, in a more artistic way from his cuties review. And so the fact that Vaush wouldn't give an inch, he had to craft a really bizarre and uncomfortable scenario, and instead Vaush left.
I love how we're all calling him Vaush. That's like, I don't know if you know this, but he like traditionally I think he didn't like being called Vaush, and he would correct people, say it's Vosh.
I didn't know that.
But now we just all call him Vaush because we know that he hates it or something. But
And I will say that Vaush was the only person to say no to talking to me, but, and I do poke fun at him probably every chance I get, he was extraordinarily polite about it. Out of
that's
everybody I
cool.
reached out to, I either hadn't heard back from them yet. I might have heard back from everybody now, and I've gotten a yes, except for him. But like I said, surprisingly, based on everything I've ever seen of him, polite.
Yeah, cool.
And I respect that. I my wife told me I was gross when I emailed him. I said, look, I have a duty. I have to at least try. I have to put it out there. I don't expect him to say yes, but
I don't see why that's gross. I don't understand why that would be gross.
she thinks he's gross.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, whatever. I think, Vosh is a human being. Um,
I,
fucking, however
I
you feel about him as a person, he's somebody who has thoughts that are worth listening to, I think. Yeah, whether you agree with everything he says or not. Yeah, I don't know. Like,
I agree with what you're saying. I think it was she doesn't like him, and she also wanted to take a blow at me at the same time.
I see.
So take it for what it is. I don't think she's like seething at the mouth, hates him.
I'm just curious, is she sort of like caught up in the proxy war, or is she like is she like a DGG or a big Destiny fan, or does she just individually just not like Vosh just on his own merits?
So I'm the huge Destiny fan. She kind of got caught up in it just by proxy of living with me. And I think that the way that things go bad between them really upsets her because a lot of times there's a lot of like trying to think of a nice way to say this, but I can't. So like kind of like snaky behavior to get out of like answering something. And then the way I think the thing that really got her was when he stopped talking to Destiny and said, like, if you mention Destiny in my Discord, I'm gonna ban you. And I was in the Discord. It was super weird. And she was just like, oh, what a piece of shit. And ever since then, not a positive word.
I see.
I
Yeah,
already told him.
I don't think it was a strong conversation for Vosh. I feel like I think that was a really good conversation for Max, because like Max didn't seem like he was saying really anything terribly disagreeable. Yeah,
Yeah.
Nazis were bad, but we should still have, Max would use the term empathy. We should recognize that Nazis became Nazis through a process. They're still human beings. We should still accept them as human beings. This sort of thing. Basically, just sort of reinventing the concept of determinism, or people like doing bad actions through like societal, the machinations of society or whatever. I mean, that should be Vosh's thing. He's like a sociology major, right? Like, this should be the sort of thing where Vosh is like, yeah, you're totally right. The society we live in should be, designed sure, designed in a way that keeps people from being Nazis. And Nazi Germany is an example of a society that was designed in such a way that promoted people being Nazis. And that's a good example of like how your environment can shape even like, a normal human being to do terrible, terrible things. That sounds like a perfectly, again, I would say it's milk toast. Maybe I'm again taking my age and experience for granted or something like that, but it doesn't seem disagreeable. And seeing Vosh turn that into, you're a Nazi and you're trying to apologize for the Nazis, is just like, bro, like Vosh was prepped to slay a dragon from the start of that conversation for sure. And Max definitely looked like the one that was just trying to like have a discussion about ideas that were, generally not crazy or terrible or whatever.
Yeah, it made Mr. Girl look like for lack of a better term, because I don't really think he felt that way, but it made him look like a victim of somebody being really egregious for no reason.
Really aggressive, yeah, and being incredibly, to use Vosh's word, uncharitable, right? Like,
Yeah, and like you said too, Vaush should have a deterministic view. He certainly does when it's on his points. When he talks about why people need to do X,
why
why people need to
rioters
be
burning down like completely, unaffiliated businesses during a riot is like totally permissible and forgivable, sure.
correct. And determinism is just fine there. Determinism is just fine there when we have to dismantle the structure of our oppression.
Yep.
It's not their fault. They have to. So yeah, that that whole conversation was very entertaining, and I really liked. I think the big win for Mr. Girl was just getting Vouch to leave, because that was impressive to me. That's somebody who almost nobody had seen or heard from got Vouch to just dip.
It was a pretty risky joke. It was a pretty like, it's a joke that made you feel gross for sure. That got Vosh to do it. I don't necessarily even blame him for leaving the conversation.
So look,
It was a pretty extreme joke.
I have a kid. Uh, I'm married. I also have a really dark sense of humor, and when somebody says something that's like explosively unexpected like that, it fucks me right up. And I was rolling. I was like, okay, I got to look into this guy. I got to know more. That was phenomenal, because that sounds like the kind of thing that like one of my friends would say in the middle of a conversation to catch somebody off guard. But this guy said it live on air.
I like, more than anything, I just think I understand that Vosh was probably just worried about the state of his channel and didn't want to be banned. You know what I mean? Vosh is somebody who's been banned from platforms based on extreme statements. So when I think about that moment, I like really when Vosh reached for the hang up button, I was like, he's like, I think this is a reasonable concern for the state of his channel.
I guess I hadn't thought of it like that. Probably because I had a lot of fun when it happened for various reasons. Probably because I'm not the biggest fan of his, and the
Sure.
joke was really good. I think that's pretty insightful to me. Yeah, this is why I wanted to talk to you.
The joke was shocking for sure, and I think Max's
Oh, yeah.
performance was really good.
Yeah, I think one of the things about his comedy is that if you don't watch him a lot, I think it is kind of hard to tell when he's joking or not. Because he has like a lot of little subtle body languages when he's making a joke. And to me, it's crystal clear. But I could see how it's not to everybody. And I don't think that makes it worse. In some ways, that makes it better. Because, like, if you're in on the joke, then you're in on the joke. But
Yeah, I get
I think
Andy
it doesn't
Kaufman
do him
vibes.
favors
Part of
sometimes.
part of the comedy is not knowing if it's comedy.
Well, I would say by now, I always know when it's a joke.
Of course.
Did you see his newest video, the How to Say No to Sex?
Mm-mm.
No, it is good. I don't care if you like him or if you don't like. It's a good like PSA about why not saying no when you're saying no is bad, and what it means when you're saying soft no's. And there's just enough tension for him to make an edgy joke that breaks it really well and then rolls into the next part. I don't think I've ever seen messaging like that from anybody. Like, if it wasn't for Mr. Girl, that's one of the few videos that I think that he could have handed the script to somebody, because it was so well written and still had a phenomenal, good for everybody video to watch. I really recommend that one, because I don't recommend Mr. Girl to people who I don't think would like Mr. Girl. I'm not like, hey, guy at work, you should watch Mr. Girl. But I'm not shy about the fact that I'm a fan of his. I think I can explain things enough to where people don't call me a pedophile and I get fired from my job because they watch 10 minutes of somebody talking about him. But that one was just a solid, good video. And when I think about, do I think that he's putting good out there? Do I think that he's doing good things? I think that's the easiest video for somebody to pick up and have a hard time saying, I don't think that he's doing something good for people. I think there's a lot more than that myself, but I think that it can often be hard to convince other people of that. Do you think...
Okay.
I was gonna say, do you think that he's putting good out there with his content?
Okay, I personally don't think so. No, I don't think his insights into a lot of real world topics are very valuable. I think he has a penchant for generally just shooting for whichever narratives allow him to construct the funniest path or the most interesting or most treacherous path towards a conclusion. Sometimes those conclusions are mundane. Sometimes I think those conclusions are just not very good or very well thought out. Or a lot of them, especially in his recent conversations over the past couple months, have been sort of just born out of some trauma that occurred in his like childhood that he like hasn't let go of. That's the read that I get, and I think honestly, I think he does himself a serious disservice, and the people who listen to him and think that he has like really valuable things to say. I think he's doing those people a disservice. I think it's typically younger people that make up his audience, like younger, impressionable, and like maybe hurt people. Like that's the read that I get, and I feel like Max is very focused on what he's owed when he talks about interpersonal structures and like the rules of relationships and stuff like that. He's very focused on what he feels that he's owed, that he's given too much of in the past. And I think it's not like terribly objective. And I think a lot of the advice that he gives can lead people to like really abusive relationships and yeah, being like really selfish and being abusive towards other people. I don't think that he does good. And you know, that's why I said I think he really does himself a major disservice. One of our first conversations we had in DMs before we talked, like the way that he talked to me about like how streamers talk and stuff, made it seem like he saw himself as this messianic figure that would come to the Twitch space and tell us all like how the way that we behaved, and the way that we interacted with each other was wrong and inhumane and all this stuff. And a lot of it just sort of exuded the same sort of feeling you get from somebody who starts their first day on a job you've been working for years, and they start pointing out all the things that they think are wrong. And it's like, motherfucker, just wait. You're gonna see why we do, things the way we do, or you're gonna see why things happen the way they happen. You just got here, right? And I feel like Max feels some pressure. This is just the impression that I get. He feels some pressure, maybe because of his age or because he has some life experience, and because maybe he sees things that he perceives as problems, to be like a savior or something like that, or like deliver really important message to people. But you can like, depending on what you have to say, you can dwell on one subject for a long period over time and like really refine that understanding of that one subject, and then as a content creator blow your load in like 3 videos, and then you have nothing more to say and you haven't spent any other time like thinking or learning about other topics. I know he recently did a video with Econoboy, and he's like interested in learning economics, and I can understand that because I had a period where I did that as well. A couple of years ago I did a couple streams with Rage Pope because I wanted to learn the fundamentals of economics, because I wanted to be able to engage in like politics stuff better, because I wanted to be able to do like better commentary and that sort of thing. It didn't go well, right? Like, and it ended up that I had to end up taking, a very basic 100 level class recently, which is like hundreds of hours of study and class time or whatever. And I can just barely engage with that stuff now. A lot of these topics take a lot of work. The expectation that you as an individual content creator can wade into the waters of these like really complex topics and this like really complicated public discourse is a very difficult expectation to realize. And yeah, I just I think maybe Max doesn't have the respect for like how difficult some of these conversations and some of these topics can be. He has like novel ideas about some stuff. Maybe some are not so novel, but his way of describing it can be novel and that could be interesting. So to the degree that it amounts to like good entertainment, I agree, is like valuable if you're able to like digest his content that way. But I fear that there are a lot of people in his audience that don't digest his content in that way and think that like he's a super genius and everything he says is valuable and true and he's the only one honest enough to say it, because that's the sort of brand that he's developed for himself. And so, you know, and I think there's a little bit of dissonance in terms of like, I know that he'll say like, you shouldn't listen to me, I'm not an expert, and his audience will say he literally says not to listen to him, but then they like hang on his every word. And whenever he gets into conversations with people, he doesn't carry that attitude forward. He'll sort of like claw at the carpet and like, kick and scream anytime anybody like disagrees with his perspective on things. I really hope. And listen, like when you told me that we were going to have this conversation, I
Mhm.
probably should have told you that it was going to have a lot of criticisms, like the ones that I'm giving now. But honest to God,
I
these are
need
like
that.
these are meant to be like the most constructive. These are my honest thoughts about Max. And like I really really appreciate that he has a real dedication to entertainment and to content creation, and I really want him like to improve on these things. But yeah, those are I really wish Max would stay out of like super important topics, or he would have a lot more humility when he's having conversations about them, and really entertain the idea that he just doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about on a lot of things. Yeah.
Um,
And I know that he'll say that as well. Like the economic stuff. I listened to his conversation with Econo Boy a little bit. And again, like I'm just barely able to have a conversation with Econo Boy. And that's after like hundreds of hours of personal research and a formal, class that I've recently taken, just one class. Um, and like just sort of reading about the topic for years. But, my understanding is that he didn't take that conversation very seriously, and that he was kind of not very well behaved in that conversation. And I just really hope that if he wants to have these conversations, he develops the sort of respect that helps him understand that like being able to dwell in these topics means a lot of personal dedication towards learning them and a lot of humility to understand that you know all you know is that you know nothing. That's all you can know. That's all.
sure. And I want to be really clear that my job is not to defend him. And even if I wanted to, I wouldn't disservice the work that he does, where he's been overly clear that he doesn't want his fans to defend him. And now, if I was talking with my friends, it might be a little bit different, but this isn't public discourse. That's not my job. So anything that I say that pushes back is just me trying to get a good understanding and maybe kind of see if you're movable on something that you're saying. I'm not trying to say that he's right or you're wrong. I want to know what you think. That's my main goal. So I don't want to get
Sure.
super bogged down on anything like that. So you said that he tells his fans not to listen to him, but then he goes really hard against the other person. Do you think it's possible that you can do both of those things sincerely?
I
I'm not
think
saying
you
that
can do
he.
it.
Okay.
I think you can do it sincerely, but I still think it's a contradiction. And yeah, I still think it's a problem if you're engaging in a way that's intellectually dishonest.
Okay. And it's the other thing that you said. Well, I have this too.
If you're going to like fashion yourself a public intellectual or somebody who's a personality that wants to discuss serious topics in a serious way.
Hmm. Oh, so you said he came in and he said that I think the way that you guys talk to each other is bad. And I think that there's a better way for you guys to talk to each other. And I think that's something that he's about to kind of drill into more seriously moving forward. He's supposed to have a conversation soon, I think, with, well, I'm not 100% sure, so I'm not going to say, but sometime in the next week or so, he's supposed to have a conversation about what he labeled as mudslinging. And again, do you think it's possible to not be that well acquainted with where you're at and say that I think that you're wrong, even if you think, having done it for a long time, that there's a reason that it happens? Do you think that it might be the case that it's still not good that it's happening that way?
It really depends. So, I mean, yeah, sure. If what you're asking me is if what you're asking me is can it be the case that some norms are like not good and can be improved upon?
Well,
Yes, of
specifically
course.
those ones.
Well, I can't recall exactly. But again, the reason I brought that up is because he had just given me the impression early on that he had tasked himself with filling like some really, really big shoes and that he was capable of filling them when he had just entered this space. Um, and that like he had all the ideas of like everything that was wrong with this space and that he had like all the right ideas of how to fix it. And I think like I feel kind of vindicated that this was like a little bit naive of him by the fact that he's basically fallen into all the same things that he was critical of when he first started. You know, like being very selective about who he talked to and not wanting to talk to people smaller than him, trying to maximize the amount of value he can get out of conversations based on the audience that he can reach and the content he can provide, which I don't think is unreasonable. Um, you know, the commentary you can have about other streamers behind their backs or whatever, like being sort of content minded. Yeah, these things I would say is like it's only a matter of time until you figure out like that this is kind of how you survive in this space, and that like at the end of the day we're entertainers and we have to be giving something to the audience. But yeah.
Sure, I would say that I think it was a wise fear for him to have. I think early on he said he's afraid of doing the same things. He's afraid of falling into those traps. Somebody asked him recently, well, I think they kind of pointedly said, you said that one of your biggest concerns was that you didn't want the money to affect how you're doing work. But I think that it has. And he said, well, like, of course it has. It's inevitable. And so I don't think that, I know especially in the beginning, he came out really strong with a lot of bold statements. And I think had a good idea of what streaming looked like from the outside. And I did sort of see a big growth as he got moving forward, talking to different people. I can't remember who it was anymore, but I saw the first time that the meta conversation was about to happen and then didn't. And I kind of threw my hands up and I was like, oh, wow, that's really cool. Even though I love meta conversation, I think when it happens every time that it's bad for his growth in his channel, and I was really rooting for that. And I know that a lot of things have changed, and I think that you just said like these things have to be that way.
Well, I don't know that they have to be that way. Again, like I'm not here defending like that all the things that he had a problem with are necessary, and that he was wrong that they were problems or something like that necessarily. Again, it was just all about the attitude that he was presenting about how he was tasking himself with being like the most important person in the room that was going to be the savior of this space or something like that. And then he seemed to really believe it.
Sure, I had a I think I had a similar experience at my new job. I came in, I see you guys have a lot of really bad problems, and I think I can help because I used to solve these problems. Our biggest problem is organization and communication between the two departments that I work in. And I used to communicate all the problems to everybody at the old company I worked at on top of doing my regular job. And my manager was a little upset that I had said something to somebody, said, well, not right now. And then upon my review, said, if you want to do that, by all means, do that. And I think there is something to be said for me not saying it right when I walked in the door. But even if it seemed scary, it seemed really scary to me that this is how things were. And that I needed to take a step back and figure out what my job was actually going to be when I got there before I made a claim like that. I see how easy it is to walk into a situation that scares you and say, hey, I really want to help this. I want to make it better. And when I saw that happening, I didn't feel for it as much. But when I look back on some of the things that he pointed out, I think I get a stronger feeling for that when I've been in that. Have you ever been in that situation before? Like, have you ever met like your friend's girlfriend for the first time and she seems like the worst? You're like, oh my God, I have to tell him, like, this woman is literally going to be the death of him. And you don't know if you should wait to say it or not. And you're trying to find that right moment. And you worry that if it goes on too long, your buddy's going to get fucked up. Have you ever been in sort of
Sure.
that
I
scenario?
lost a little bit of what you said. Your connection dropped out a little bit. So
Oh no. Oh, so I essentially I was asking, have you been in a position like that yourself? Where
which kind?
where you're in a situation where you don't have the seniority to make a claim about something you see that scares you. And you kind of try to parse out when is the right time to say something about it and say, like, I'd really like to help here because what I'm seeing is scaring the hell out of me. And it might not be the right, like, you don't have the social credit in that situation to say that.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Then that makes sense to me. It's a little hard for me to state what I'm thinking to get a better understanding of what you're saying without defending, but I like this a lot. And by the way, you said it was going to be very critical. It's so hard for me to find somebody who's critical of Mr. Girl and wants to talk about it. I've had one person who sent me DMs of a very normal conversation between two human beings and said that bad things happened like within this. And when I reached out to him and said, "Can you describe him in 3 words or a few sentences so I can get a feel for the person?" They said, "You're being really aggressive. I think you need to apologize to me." And I was like, "Are you?" I
Okay,
couldn't tell if
I
I
think
thought they
it's
were being
probably
ironic.
really rare to find streamers specifically who can have
This wasn't a
criticisms.
streamer,
No, no,
but
just to be clear, I
oh,
think that it's probably also rare to have a streamer that has criticisms of Mr. Girl that are like well founded and that are also fans and like, want the guy to do well. It feels like a lot of the people, the streamers who have criticisms of Mr. Girl are not the well founded criticisms. It's like he's a pedophile or he's a fucking, you know, they'll like go completely hyperbolic with like the absolute worst faith interpretation of something he said somewhere. I don't know if that's been your experience, but yeah, I don't see a lot of streamers making valid criticisms of Mr. Girl in the first place, if that's what you're getting to.
yeah. So when somebody has them, when I present this project, it's worthless, completely garbage, not worth watching if I don't present both sides.
Hmm.
Anybody, I wouldn't need to make a project. I just get on the camera and say a bunch of things I like about Mr. Girl, shut the camera off, and post it. Right?
Hmm.
I need to show the other side and why I think that there are some valid criticisms, and there might be some things that I just plain don't like. These are the reasons why I still like and support Mr. Girl and why I think this project is worth making. And most of the time, it's like you said, I think he's a pedophile. I don't think anybody can rationally say, based on anything we've seen, that that's the case. I think that, I think that people feel really justified when they
To
say
be
that,
clear,
yeah,
I think that there are okay. Pedophile, I think, is a word that people use really really loosely. Like
sure,
like maybe somebody can make the case that he's attracted to 12-year-olds because he said that they're hot 12-year-olds or whatever the hell. I just don't even think that's important. Like I don't like if that's true for him, then I don't know if that's necessarily even a valid criticism to say this guy is attracted to minors. That sounds like a horrible like affliction. You know what I mean? Like
agreed.
not a criticism of someone's character unless they're spinning that into and it should be legal for me to act on this. That would be a criticism, right? Like but I don't think that this is necessarily true for Max. I just want to push back against the idea that it's completely unfounded.
Yeah,
I don't think
th-
it's
th-
unfounded. I just don't think it's relevant.
oh, okay. I would say that I think that it's unfounded, but I don't, I don't need to defend it either. Do you still watch any of his videos as they come out?
Sometimes it really depends. I got to be honest. It is really difficult to watch his videos. I watched a lot of his conversations with Destiny and like I really lost faith, a lot of faith in Max's ability to have like an intellectually honest conversation after the most recent ones. Like honest to god, I think he came off as incredibly emotionally needy and just completely lost in his own specific problems that he's been projecting onto people for a long time. And it seems like maybe he's been generating a little bit of self-awareness about that, and I want that to be the case. I want it to be true that he sees that that's the case. But yeah, like I don't think his conversations are very good in general. I think actually most of his conversations are really bad. And it really is just a matter of him just projecting, like just sort of blurting out his feelings about a subject, not being interested in other people's feelings beyond where they disagree, and just sort of like domineering them in the conversation, shouting over them, telling them that they're lying or what have you. I actually don't think he's very good at conversations. I don't think he's good at empathy. But I think he's really funny, and I think he's got a great eye for content and production, and yeah.
Um, Maybe the reason why I think so differently about the way that he talks is I've been told that I talk very similarly to Mr. Girl when I'm talking to somebody about something that's important, particularly, or people that are close to me when I can be more vulnerable when I speak. And I think that I always think of the way that I talk is how a therapist would tell you to talk. When I grew up, I went to therapy several times, and when they say you should say things like I feel like this is why I feel that way, and then try to see if they can say what you're saying back to you and make sure that the point is getting across.
Yeah.
And I think that some of the things that he says almost mirror exactly things that I've said, like oh, I said almost the exact same thing last week. So when I see the conversation happening poorly, I think it makes me reflect on the conversations that I'm having poorly with other people that seem to make them a little bit uncomfortable because I'm speaking that way. And that was actually one of the first things I addressed when I went to therapy. I said, I don't think I'm very good at communicating because I say things and people seem to think I mean something else. And I kind of had examples. We went through the examples and stuff, and my therapist told me, I don't think you're bad at communicating. I think that most of the time, people just don't believe that you're saying the words you actually mean. There's
Okay,
like always some kind
that
of
may be
game
true
going
for
on.
you. That may be true for you, but I don't think that's true for Max.
I,
I
I
don't
feel
think
like
that's
I
the
relate
case.
to that.
I see. In Max's case, I think it's just really important to him to have his ideas validated, and I think it's really important to him that he is seen as having like really unique insights, and that he's like especially good at divining people's intentions and emotions and ideas. And if he's not fed that, or if he's denied that, I think he takes it very personally, and maybe on some level, on a like conscious level, he just rejects the reality that that could be true, that he could be wrong about like some of those things.
I think it took me a long time to come to the conclusion that maybe I was bad at communicating.
Hmm.
And I don't, just because my therapist said that I am doesn't mean that I am either. But I think that it's if you believe that you're a good communicator, I think that it's very hard to hear that you're not, especially if you think the person that's saying it is not an effective communicator. Um,
Listen, I agree that ego is a very, very difficult barrier for many people. Like ego is I think probably the strongest barrier to penetrate when when like receiving criticisms, or when approaching self improvement or something like that. It's difficult for sure.
Undoubtedly. By the way, did I even say thank you since we started this for agreeing to talk to me? I know I did in DMs.
Listen, you don't have to thank me. Like I appreciate the sentiment or whatever, but you're giving me content as well. Like it's
I need to
fine.
thank
This
you
is
for
a
me.
mutual. Okay.
I'm have we do we not both acknowledge that I am from Michigan? Is this not how we behave?
Yeah, yeah, people are super polite from Michigan.
That either super polite or unwieldingly racist and awful in every way. There's like no in between. Either you're a grandmother who brings people cookies for no reason and compliments them while giving them to them, and apologizes for taking up their time, or you are the loudest, most obnoxious hillbilly with your overalls pulled up too high and offensive in every way imaginable.
Sure. Okay.
That's my experience living in Michigan.
Well, thank you there. Hey, thank you, neighbor. There you go.
We're basically Canadians and Detroit. Um, are you disappointed that you didn't get to be a part of the Dr. K discussion with Max? Because I know you had a lot of content going around the Ayurvedic parts, and I know you and I actually had some disagreements about Dr. K himself through your chat, and I hit you up on Twitter too, say I think you misunderstood some things, but it seemed like that would have been, I would have liked to see you guys talk about that.
I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed in Max about that. He seemed really receptive to talking, to everybody about that except me specifically, and that I get a little bit of Osh vibes from that. If I'm totally honest, there's one person I won't talk to about this, and it seems to be, I don't know. That being said, I understand that like when I had an opportunity to talk to him, it was after he had to deal with Dario for like 2 or 3 hours, and that guy can be really, really exhausting to talk to. So
Um, have you since tried talking to him at all? I don't know like how he communicates to anybody. Sometimes people think that because I'm a YouTube mod, I've had somebody like straight up tell me you should get him to talk to me. Like I have that sort of access to him. It's really I don't have any more information aside from like Discord moderation stuff than anybody else does. But
I have not
so
tried setting up a public discussion with Max since then. No,
gotcha.
if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, or what are you? I guess I'm trying to ask a question when I should be making a statement. I hope that you guys can bury the hatchet because I think you guys could make good content. I think that
I don't think we have bad blood. I think he just doesn't want to make content with me, and I have no choice but to respect that.
Is this to imply that you would like to make content with him? Because that
I
would be
will talk.
cool.
I'll talk to anybody. I will talk to anybody. If anybody wants to talk to me, um, the thing is, like, I don't know. I can talk to Max, but like after seeing the past couple of like how the past couple of conversations went, I wouldn't be excited to like have to compete with him screaming over me just to be able to get an idea out or to be able to even like finish an idea. And like one of the very first things I said to him after his book smarts conversation was like, what guarantee can I have that if we have a conversation, you're going to you're going to submit yourself to hearing the things that I say and evaluate them, like with the potential to integrate. Basically just saying like, what are the guarantees I can have that we can even have a good faith conversation? Because like, you know, when we were setting up a discussion, I basically said, I've seen like a couple of your conversations now. It seems like you're not very intent on listening to what other people have to say. And it seems like you kind of just want to like put your own thoughts out there, and I think that's fine, and I'm happy to sort of like review your thoughts, and we have this sort of react culture in this space. But if this is going to be a conversation, I want it to be multiplayer, like I want there to be a reason that we're occupying the same space and time simultaneously. And part of that means there has to be some sort of like equitable guarantee that are, we're going to like submit each other to examine the other person's thoughts in good faith and that sort of thing. So like, if it's just going to be him blurting out his feelings about a thing, I don't need to be there for that conversation. There's no point in me being there for that conversation other than it puts me on the radar and it like shows my face to an audience or whatever. There's utility. There's like it makes good business sense for me, but that's not what I'm particularly excited about. So if if I can become convinced over time that Max is able to sort of like develop a little more humility in these conversations, and that I'm convinced he's able to sort of like have these conversations in better faith, then I'd be interested in having a conversation with Max, because that's what makes a conversation good to me. Otherwise, I'm happy to just review somebody's thoughts and give my piece after. If they're not going to listen to me, you know what I mean? If they're not going to like listen to the feedback or listen to any pushback or provide me any when I'm saying things that are, not just the last thing they said, then there's no point for me.
Yeah, I can understand that. I don't think that you give a lot of charity, and I give a lot of charity to people when I'm talking to them, especially when I disagree.
Hmm.
Well, I would say generally you do. Sometimes I see that charity go out the window when you're talking to somebody when you get a little heated. But I understand what it's like to give a lot of charity to somebody and then realize part of the way through that if I think that they're bad faith, like, oh, I've been wasting my time and I'm fucking stupid. I should have caught this 15, 20 minutes ago. I don't want to talk anymore. So if that's how you envision a conversation, I couldn't imagine why it would be any kind of desirable for you to pursue it.
Yeah, I don't think a conversation is supposed to be both people with their hand on the side of their mouth with, you know what I mean, like cutting out the person that they're facing and instead directing all the sound to the audience, right? That's not a conversation to me. That's two people preaching. It's multiplayer preaching. I don't want to preach.
I can understand that.
I actually I really hate that in like panels and when people start doing what they call virtue signaling, when somebody stands up on a soapbox and they face away from the person they're actually having a discussion with and just start like saying all their, you know, their their like initial inclinations about a given topic, their preconceived notions.
Yeah, I think even debates that have the formal openings make me feel uncomfortable. When it's somebody talking for 5 minutes about the thing, not only is it the more open form debates just seem to be a more logical way to have a conversation about a topic, but it also feels creepy no matter what they're talking about to me. I get the weird like you're if you're from Michigan, odds are you probably were forced to go to church when you were a kid, right?
A couple times, yeah.
You ever been to a Catholic wedding?
No, I don't think so.
Oh my God. Every once in a while, I'll be in a situation like that where somebody's talking for like 5 minutes, and I'll get this feeling that like I'm in the chapel where people are standing and kneeling and standing and kneeling and then saying a thing. It's terrifying. Like if they're wearing black robes instead of like nice clothes, you would just think that it
It
was a
doesn't sound
satanic
fun.
ritual. Yeah,
Yeah, the concept of a Catholic wedding is like, okay, weddings are usually supposed to be celebrations and fun, but it's
yeah.
Catholic, so I know that that's not allowed.
But it's spooky.
Yeah.
If you're not Catholic and you're there, it's really easy to see how anybody who's religious could see it as a religion they view as negative, and sometimes I get those vibes when like the debate openers or when people just drone on too long. It just makes me very uncomfortable. The same feelings I get from that. It's too
Um, I'll say
brainwashy, kind
this:
of.
an opening statement is really valuable, especially when talking about a contentious topic, because you need to be able to stake out your position so that people know what your position is entering a thing. This is my position. This is why my position. That's like really, really valuable for a person to be able to do before you. I mean, that's how you a conversation has to start, right? Like you can't really have a conversation about something unless you know what the other person believes and you've established what you believe and preferably why. But I understand that, like in most of these opening statements on these panels and stuff, there's a lot of theater and there's performance. People have like jokes that they tell. There's like sort of jabs being traded. There's a lot of drama. There are a lot of theatrics and stuff, and that's the stuff I don't like. I agree. It's rarely somebody taking the time to say, "This is what I believe. These are all the reasons I believe it."
A minute and a half cap, I think.
It's tough because some topics really are complicated and there are a lot of variables to consider. And so like it makes sense to want to use that time to be able to get ahead of as many like arguments that you foresee in the future and like just answer as many questions as you can sort of anticipate with your opening statement just to like make a more efficient conversation or at least whittle it down to like what the argument is actually going to be about early on. But yeah, certainly there's a time limit. It's a tough thing to draw. And also like the more qualified you are to talk about a topic, the more likely you are to sort of pontificate and be long-winded about things, and that's just not fun for people that aren't specialists in that field as well.
I I may or may not feel attacked by that last statement. So
What do you mean?
I think I I tend to really hone in on a subject, and I like talking probably more than anything else. And I'll notice when I went on too long and pontificated and gotten like so far in the weeds that's like maybe like layer two for me, and I'm like, oh, everybody just thinks I'm crazy now, and they haven't heard anything past like the second sentence. Like, gotta dial it back and maybe chill it out. And I'm really not trying very hard to read your chat, but which one of us looks like Jesus? It's a perfectly valid claim for either of us.
I have a guess, okay?
I, I was gonna
You've
ask
got your
you
hair
who.
tied up.
That's true. I've just been called it a lot. I wondered too. How far back does yours go? I did plan on asking you too. This is just a good time. I think mine's like right past the nipple, but I got titties too. So
It depends. It's curly today, so it's a little bit shorter, but, yeah, yeah, I think mine's about nipple length, but, I'm a long dude. I don't know how tall you are, but, like,
I'm
my wife says
5'11".
Oh, okay. My wife says sometimes, like, "I forget how long your hair is, because you're, like, so tall," you know? It's like an extra, however extra the stretch is beyond that.
That's fair. Every time I put my hair down, my wife just touched me like, "Your hair is so long." Like you see me every day. Um, yeah. Oh, and also since I'm on kind of a spot where I can be more casual, I just want to say that I think that. Uh, wait, how old are you? If you don't mind me asking.
36.
36. Okay, you're not that much older than me. You graying out, man. And I mean that with all due respect, because I was gonna say, what by the time that I gray out, my my mustache is getting there. I try not to notice so much, but I tell my wife all the time, I hope that my hair uh grays out as well as yours does, because otherwise if this shit just goes white like that, I'm fucked. I
I
I,
started going gray when I was, like, 20, so
I saw my first one at 21 right after my kid was born, and I was like, oh no. And I actually asked the doctor if we could do something about it. I
I
think I knew
started getting a
better.
little salt in my pepper, yeah, probably around, like, 26 or 27, I think I got the gray sideburns or whatever. I love it personally. I like the streak of gray.
Yeah, if it goes that way, I'm in good shape. Otherwise, probably in trouble. At least it's not bald, right?
Hey, hey, listen, respect to my bald kings, and listen, it's only a matter of time for
Immense
me.
respect.
I've been saying it for the past couple years. It's only a matter of time for me, but I don't. I've kind of already made peace with baldness. It's easy for me to say with this mane that I've got now, but um, yeah, when I very first saw my hairline receding, I was like, "Whew, I gotta make sense of this quick." I have a lot of sympathy for people. Like I understand that like baldness is a thing that causes a lot of emotional distress for men, and I can understand why. It like feels like you're infertile, it feels like you're powerless, and it certainly makes things more difficult for dating and stuff, but
It's like a visible sign that you're not what you used to be, to like a very hard to ignore degree. When it's unwanted baldness, at least. Yeah, I
yeah.
it freaks me out. The idea that my hair will just go away.
When I'm bald, I'm gonna look like a Max Payne NPC.
I, you know what? I was
Not gonna
gonna
be
ch-
pretty.
I was gonna try to take like a fun jab at you, but I think you're gonna be fine. I think you'll be all right. It's usually when you go bald, you keep this. Well, I guess I don't need to ask you that one. I think that your overall view of Mr. Girl is negative. Yeah.
No,
If you had to go one
not
way or the other,
okay. I think the content he's been putting out since he first landed in this space, by and large, I'm not personally a fan. But I think Max is just has so many tangibles that I think he's trying to integrate into other stuff. But yeah, like I don't know what else to say. Like, I have a lot of criticisms, but I wouldn't even say it's overall negative. I think Max has tangibles that very, very few people in this space have. I think Max is an incredibly talented and thoughtful guy. I think he's intelligent. You know what I mean? I think he's thoughtful. I think he's just funny as hell. He's got loads of charisma. He's working with a full toolkit. And he's at the beginning of his journey on Twitch and with streaming, not so much with YouTube. I think his YouTube content really showcases how long he's been at this. The production quality is just magnificent, and in like his general, it seems
insane.
like his general content acumen seems really good. It seems like he writes a script and thinks about it, and like he presents arguments that lead to a conclusion and stuff. That stuff is all like pretty good. But when it comes to conversations and stuff, this is a really difficult thread to needle, and or needle to thread. And when I think about it, there are precious few people that really do these conversations very, very well. I can think of like a small handful. So it's those are big shoes to fill. Like the idea of doing streaming live unedited conversation content, it's tough to be perfect in those, and that's basically where the bar is set at this point. So
And I can say that the last talking to the few people that I have, and the amount of work that goes into it, and the amount of time that you have in between it, when if it's even every other day, it's insane. Trying to get your thoughts together, trying to schedule things. I will never let anybody get away with saying that streamers need to get a real job around me ever again. I think I've talked to maybe 5 people in the last 8 to 10 days, and it is the most overwhelming thing I've ever done, like physically and even emotionally. It's just very draining. Meeting dinner after midnight. Well, I work a full-time job, and then I come home and like trying to like write down notes and just as low end as what I'm doing. I think that it'll even be more work when I'm trying to put together the video. It's so much, everything to keep track of. You guys, I know that everybody who's on Twitch who does it regularly is busting their ass every single day. I that's in the very short period of time that I've been talking to people, that is the biggest takeaway, is that it is significantly more work than anybody gives credit for. It's nuts.
it's harder than people give it credit for, but it's also easier than it's worth complaining about. That's how I feel about it. It's still a great gig. If you're able to make any money at all doing streaming, I think it's a wonderful. You get to be a fucking TV star. You get to be a star. Like if you make any money at all, whether it's to a dozen people or 2 dozen people or half a dozen people or to 100 people or 1,000 people, you get to like it's a saturate. I could talk all day about this, but like I feel like one viewer is a blessing. You've got somebody that is willing to listen and hang on to your every word and like fill their leisure time listening to everything that you have to say. If you're that kind of streamer, if you're the talking kind of streamer or whatever, or whatever you provide is like worth enough light in their lives that they're willing to come to that light and like warm themselves, and they've decided that it's like a part of their life that's brings them joy and happiness and stuff like that. I think being an entertainer is just a beautiful, beautiful thing, but it is really, really difficult. And like the logistics of our job are something to be coveted for sure. We sit in our comfy computer chairs at our computers, sometimes playing video games, spending our work days playing video games. Yeah.
Well, I do think it's probably a bit less overwhelming if it's your primary focus and you don't have anything else going on like for work. But I still think that what I say stands true. But I'm not saying at all that it's not worth it. both in the aspect of having people appreciate what you're doing, even not even just the people that have come and talked to me through chat, or like that I've gotten a lot more followers. Like that wasn't my focus. That's not my goal. I I haven't wanted to make art in 10 years. And like when I went to therapy and said like what are you looking to get out? I still want to make art again because it's killing me to not. And I said that to my therapist and my psychiatrist. This is the first time in a long time. And the fact that you said yes, that you wanted to hear what I had to say and help me with what I'm working on. The fact that everybody that has said yes that I haven't talked about yet because we haven't hammered down on time, and that's mostly been my policy. And everybody that I've already talked to, the best feeling I've ever had said, "Oh, you're working on something. I want to help you with that." It's insane to me. Even if it, I hope it doesn't turn out bad, but even if it turns out bad, that's priceless to me, genuinely.
Even if it turns out bad, it was only the most recent thing that you did, right? Like
Yeah,
you got to remember there's going to be more in the future. If you want to make art, it's about a constant stream of creativity like flowing into different projects and stuff.
yeah.
Hopefully, maybe.
I, I have to stop myself from starting other things in the middle of this.
Yeah,
I
finishing a project is difficult. That's definitely a skill.
and been pretty good at it so far, not reaching too far into those other things. But yeah, I don't care what people are doing, what kind of streams they're making. I know it's hard, and I think it's also rewarding no matter what. I think I like it's not. I think from the average viewer perspective, if I was just sitting there watching somebody saying like, even if you have one viewer, it's worth it. Like, well, that sounds like kind of like the head of hair when you have it's easy to say I'm not worried that much about going bald when you have a full head of hair. It's kind of like saying, well, I'm not really worried about running out of money when your wallet's fucking up your spine because it's so big when you sit on it. But I really do think that that's the case if you're doing it because you like what you're doing.
Money is always going to be a concern, of course, but you know, the idea of looking up and wishing that you had more viewers is something that potentially may not stop. You see the way that Hassan reacts to, you know what I mean? Like you see the way that he reacts to losing 1,000 viewers here or there when he's got 35 to spare, right? Like in the way that he'll have an absolute meltdown and feels, entitled to more and stuff when he's making millions a year or whatever. That's a thing that we should all probably hope that we can individually avoid. But I
Sure,
understand that it can be really demoralizing to push really, really hard. And like, what other metric do you have for success other than the money that you're making and to compare yourself among your contemporaries, right? Your peers. And when you see yourself not measuring up, like I understand why that can take a psychological toll on streamers and stuff. And it's going to take time. It's tough. Like the advice that streamers should get jobs is just good advice. It's just sound financial advice
I think it's
because
shitty to
even
say.
what's that?
I think it's shitty to say.
It doesn't seem nice, but like we need to not it's nearly impossible. Just by the numbers, it's nearly impossible to succeed in streaming unless you really have a lot of good ideas and a ton of effort and a ton of energy to throw at it and you have a really good strategy for marketing. That's the one that I think everybody misses and something I don't do very well, if I'm honest. You've like streaming is not even about putting out good content so much as it's about putting that content in front of as many eyes as possible.
It's true. I did a marketing course at a technical center. I was in high school, and it's I think that stuff's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry that you're. Then you should. I think that you would do really good at marketing if you looked at it. It's
Well, I'm
it's
just
pretty
too
clear
lazy to do
cut.
the marketing is really what I'm not sure I'm even good at it, right? I might be horrible at it, but I'm also just like in fact, I know that I'm horrible at it because like I feel like I say a lot of things that are bad for business on stream just when I'm talking about streaming as like a thing to do or whatever or like my value in this space or something like that. I feel like I'm just like constantly undercutting that when I'm talking about things, you know. I'm like people fashioned me a politics streamer for a long time and my whole like brand was like, you shouldn't listen to us cuz we don't know what the fuck we're talking about, like
I think I heard that earlier.
yeah, maybe earlier
And
in
then
this
you continue
conversation.
to talk again, and you continue to talk about politics. Anyways, okay.
I mean, that really doesn't extend much further than reading the news and giving some off the cuff analysis that shouldn't be worth that much to many people. But yeah,
Well, you know what they say. Humans gonna human.
that is true. The humans, they are going to human.
I I hate it so much. I hate hearing that phrase so much. But I'm glad I got to say it too. You said that you talked about Mr. Girl on Twitch. You know he's banned on Twitch, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you think he should have been?
No.
I agree. Um, it's generally agreed upon what got him banned. Are you aware of what's generally agreed upon?
I believe he says that it's because at one point he said something like, "I don't condemn pedophiles," or "I do have compassion for pedophiles," or something like that, something along those lines, or "I am defending pedophiles," or something like that. And like in context, I agree with his general point. Or do you have more insight?
That wasn't the thing. We generally
No.
agreed that it was the POCD conversation, which I thought he was super smart. Do you know what POCD is?
Yeah, yeah. I thought he said that during that conversation.
Oh, I think that it was just that he brought them on and let them talk about it and was compassionate towards them in general. I think
Yeah, I mean,
that's, I
if
don't think
that's
it's any
why he
one
was banned.
thing.
I'll say this: I when he was on Twitch, I was watching him a lot more often just because it's easier for me to watch on Twitch than YouTube. I don't really understand how to catch people streaming on YouTube unless I think to go there. Like I don't know how the notifications work about YouTube streamers or whatever the fuck. So since he moved to YouTube, I haven't watched him a whole lot, but I watched a lot of his content then. And like just my read is that I don't think ever did anything that was worthy of a ban. So during that time, and there were a lot of people that were out for his blood, and maybe there were people at Twitch that were just like, this guy's a fucking liability.
I think there might have been, I think that it would be crazy to deny the fact that there has to be somebody on Twitch who's sensitive to the things that everybody else was upset about and wanted to take his platform away without like a real good just cause. I think the general public has a pretty visceral reaction to when you say anything other than
Put him
pedophiles
in
are
a
the
wood
worst.
chipper.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's disgusting.
Yeah. That was one of the first things that really drew me to Mr. Girl because it had been 8 or 9 years ago. It was the first time I ever seen like the only cure for pedophilia is a bullet. And I was like, well, just to be clear, just responded back because it's like all the people up north where I lived. We mean people that actually molest kids, right? Like, all of them. It's like even ones who just didn't do anything and they just think about it. Yes. And I was like, that's the scariest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. I was really ready. And so I had to like keep on asking and prodding. And eventually people were like, well, what are you, a pedophile? Like, wait, because I don't want to kill somebody for having a thought, it really messed me up. And when I heard him say that, I was like, this person's not crazy. That's the first sane take I've ever heard somebody publicly say about the
Or at the
subject.
very least, he critically engages on that topic for sure, in a way that most people don't.
Sure. And I think it made me, I think I really felt seen when I heard that. Like, because I've never heard anybody say anything other than that. Like, I didn't realize that this was like a very, very common sentiment until I seen it on Facebook. And then I just didn't really engage because I didn't want to get the shit beaten out of me when I was on my way to work because people think that I'm a pedophile because I don't want to kill somebody who has thoughts. And that was, I think, it's it's sad to say, but I think that it was really unique to hear somebody say maybe we shouldn't kill people for things they haven't even done. And I don't necessarily, I don't believe in the death penalty. Anyways, I don't think we should kill people that actually do hurt kids. I think that,
And maybe intend to never do.
yeah, like I don't even think we have to be hostile towards people that have any kind of bad thoughts. I think that we should just try to help people. It seems that's,
All right, well, I ain't trying to get banned, so we got to move past this. And listen, we agree, okay? We
well,
shake hands.
I was trying to be vague.
Mhm.
But yeah, that was something that really, you know, I think that when Mr. Girl says anything that's really oppositional to Twitch, I think there's probably a lot of other people who connect initially because they were made to feel like they're crazy, whether it be the Dr. K thing or the transel culture thing. I think he's connecting with people who are afraid that people around them are going to be really hostile towards them and cut them out so they can't say it or they have said it and they learn to shut up. And he's saying the things that he's saying to me out of care. And usually when people say things that a lot of people disagree with, they're doing it to be an asshole.
I'm not sure. I got to be honest. My
And
read is My read is that he's not doing it out of care and that he's doing it because he wants people to think that he has like unique insights. But that's my read. And maybe, I mean, like, I don't think it's as black and white as that or as binary as that. But yeah, I think he might care a little bit, but I don't think that's his primary motivator.
Oh, that was actually something I wanted to ask you. Do you think the things that you think are motivating Max are what he thinks is motivating him?
Maybe not. I have no idea.
Okay,
Max is somebody that I usually feel like I can trust to be completely straightforward no matter how damning it is, right? That's the whole refreshingly honest thing, is that like he's willing to say something no matter how damning it is for him, but if it's what he really believes. So I don't think that Max would lie, if that's what you're asking.
same. Yeah, because I think that he says that he does a lot of the things because it's important to him. I also think that I don't know of any other creator who's trying to set an example and do the things to further what he says he cares about, like making open DMs in Discord, um, talking about how TikTok is very bad for children. Um, just a lot of kind of PSA kind of things to prevent the things that he's worried about from happening. It seems like for a lot of people who get really loud about things that they don't like, I think that there's things that are happening because he's doing them. Like I went into somebody else's Discord who was a fairly large streamer, and I saw that they too have like the uh, open DMs in their Discord, and they don't take DMs in their Discord. The little things like that make me think that he's pushing things in a direction that would be intuitive of what he's saying. And do you, do you think that? I know you said you don't think that what he's doing is overall good. Do you think that he's helping people
That's a
with his
really
work?
difficult that's a really difficult calculation. I'm probably not even qualified because I haven't seen most of his like advice and confessions or like his hotline stuff.
Sure.
I've seen a couple of them, and like my initial read off the couple of advice and confessions things that I saw is that he's just not like he didn't seem very good at understanding the people that he was talking to, and he took some wild leaps that ended up being like just shots in the dark that were just pure misses. And I was just like, I don't know if I can keep watching this personally. I don't know who he would be helping. My biggest fear is that he thinks he's here to help people, right? Because I don't think he's equipped. I think he needs help, right? Like after the last couple conversations he had with Destiny, the read that I got is like that this guy is dealing with a lot of issues from his past, and he's like still looking for his pound of flesh, and he's like uh building an entire like rule set for how to interact with other humans based on like him still searching for his or something like that, based on like instances where he was wronged or mistreated or something like that or misunderstood in the past. So yeah, I don't know how to qualify it. Do I think he's helping people? I think a lot of the things he says are just outright harmful in certain situations. His like whole entry into the space and like his whole um all of his ideas surrounding trans people, for example, is, I think, overall just not good and comes from a place of misunderstanding. I asked him in our conversation near the end if maybe gender dysphoria is something that like he just really can't comprehend, if that's a feeling that he just maybe can't comprehend, and he said no. Like I don't think that that's a feeling that I can't comprehend. I was talking about how he talked about I guess he saw himself in a mirror and felt uncomfortable with the way that he looked because he was older, and he was relating that to gender dysphoria. And I said, what if gender dysphoria is something that you really can't wrap your head around because you haven't really experienced it? And he says, I don't like that thought because it means we can't understand each other. He did not say he did not seem to have really any concern for whether or not it may be true, so much as how it made him feel that it might be true, and it made him like the prospect that it could be true made him feel bad, so he just rejected the idea. And his views around trans people are built entirely around the discomfort, apparently, that he can't understand the way that trans people feel. To me, that seems really, really selfish. I watched a little bit of his watching the Dr. K talk to Reckful. Within the first couple minutes, he immediately starts launching into competing with Dr. K to build a better psychoanalytic profile, or like like to just like out psychoanalyze Reckful as opposed to Dr. K. And to me, that felt really disgusting. And like, I'm taking leaps here, but I know that he's talked a lot about how he has sort of issues with his father, and his father, was a psychologist or something like that. And it just really seemed like he
Yes.
was carrying a lot of that baggage into this like Reckful and Dr. K situation. And it's like, motherfucker, this is the stuff you're criticizing Dr. K for. You're doing it and you're like trying to compete with him. And this seems really personal, you know?
It's
I don't know.
not what he criticized him for, though. I think a lot of times when people talk about it, the thing that he criticizes him for is for being a doctor and having playing fast and loose with the ethics of doctor-patient relationship. And what was it? Last Wednesday, I talked to my psychiatrist about it because he asked me how I'm doing, what I'm doing. I said, I'm doing really good. I'm working on this project, and it's been really, really good. I didn't think that making art would look like this when I said it, but this is. And he said, "Oh well, what about?" And I kind of ran through, and I was like, "Well, let me tell you about this thing." And I just sort of ran past him the basic. Like if I could break it up into like 2 minutes explaining the Dr. K. Reckful situation, because he's expensive and I only get a half hour. So I just went fact based, and as I told him, he kind of leaned back in his chair, and he's a super nice old white guy. So always smiling, and he sort of leaned back in his chair, and like his face kind of like twisted up when I was telling him. And at one point he goes, "But the fact that there's no what is it when you confidentiality? Is it the confidentiality alone?" And then he just kind of put his hands together and like leaned back, and it started feeling like I was hurting him, my doctor, just based on how he reacted. And when I said, and then Reckful eventually committed suicide, he just sort of like he killed him. That was his reaction at the end when I said that, and I was like, well, I think it says that like I think he prevented him from getting care that could have stopped him from being killed, and he just sort of was like, yeah. And I think that he realized he did something really unprofessional right then, and it messes me up. I feel like I shouldn't have said anything to him, but
Yeah.
it was like sad and fear and mad all at the same time, twisted up. That was one of the most uncomfortable interactions I had with somebody that I cared about in recent memory. And I guess maybe he could get more if he watched the thing. I don't think I misrepresented anything. I try to be unbiased as much as I can be. But I feel like that kind of reinforces the importance of those things to me. I'm not asking anybody to believe me that that's exactly how it happened, or that because that happened in that situation, that's what it should mean to you. However, I can't unsee the reaction and have it build, and I can't unhear him just as a doctor in the same position immediately hearing that, whether he wholly agrees with it or not after thinking about it, he killed him. Like that's going to stick with me for a really, really long time. And I think I have to take that into consideration when I think about how bad is it to violate these lines. And I really like and trust this guy. That's why I still pay him way too much money for a half hour, let's just say. And I think it's hard for people that don't read into psychology a lot. That's what I originally went to college for, was psychology. And what I hope to go back to school for is psychology. And what I nerd out on when I have free time. I read a lot about that stuff. I think that it's hard to fully grasp that stuff. I don't think I fully grasp how important those things are, but it was something I immediately picked up on and hoped that it would be an emphasis during the whole Dr. K. Reckful situation. I think it freaks me out. I think I get why sometimes Max gets a little unhinged when he talks about it, because I think that if I had to talk about it for an hour, I would end up a little unhinged too. And
I see.
I think that thing's pretty scary. But I know that you had some issues that you talked about too, and you've been to a therapist, so it's not like it's completely alien to you. I'm not saying that other. What I'm trying to say is, I don't think that if you haven't had similar experiences and you haven't had any education, that you have no right to disagree either. I just think that it's
I gotta be honest, I'm not
harder
sure
to
what we're
wrap your
talking
head
about
around
right
it.
now.
The Dr. K and Reckful situation, I think that it's hard for the average person watching what happened to grasp why what Mr. Girl thinks is bad about that situation is the bad thing, and why it's as bad as it is. Does that make more sense? I said it's hard for me to talk about at length because it kind of makes the
Mhm.
thoughts go fast.
Sure. So, I think a lot of people who paid attention during that time have the idea that that Dr. K has my wholesale endorsement and that nothing he ever did was wrong or something like that.
Oh, I don't
I've
think
been
that.
I've been critical of Dr. K since before Max was on the platform.
Hmm.
Um, you know, since maybe up to as much as a year before then. And I think there were things that Max was right about, of course. And I don't even think anybody disagrees that he mishandled the Reckful situation, whether it amounted to murder or negligence or anything like that. I'm not ready to, bite onto that yet. However,
Sure.
your therapist felt about it or whatever.
A
But
psychiatrist,
I
but yeah.
was only commenting on, the just a recent video that I saw, which is an example of Max doing things that I think are not helpful and actually like kind of harmful. I understand the distinction between Dr. K has his like license to perform therapy and Max doesn't, but I still think it's gross to be putting out to a large audience you competing with that therapist to out psychoanalyze a dead person you never knew within 1 minute of hearing them speak and sort of sanctioning that as acceptable behavior um, in order to like help sell your crusade against the latter person. That's all.
I think I would be wholesale on board with you if I knew that when he made those videos, well, maybe not wholesale. Maybe I wouldn't have this exactly kind of. I think I'd be really close to how you feel about them. If my understanding of those videos is they were made when he was watching them for the first time and he just decided to release them now. But if they were made with the intent going into it that I'm going to show people these are my thought processes going into it, I don't think that can't affect how you're going to talk about it and how you're going to behave about it. But if that was just for him originally, and then he decided, well, I want to start talking about this again, this is a good way to bring it back up, then I don't think that I would agree with that. But it's very, very hard to say which is the case. So I'm going to tend to give more charitability. Obviously, I'm a bit of a big fan. I think that, well, you know what I think and why I think it. So yeah, but otherwise, if it came out the fact that that was the intent the whole time, I would be really upset about it.
I don't think the
The way
intention
that's
matters
presented.
to me personally, but I understand why you disagree.
Well, if that wasn't meant for anybody else to see, and that's just how he thinks and how he was going about it for him, rather than like I want people to think like he's wrong for this and this and this and this and this. Like if that came out instead of the reckless video, that would have been not great. Not no, well, it wouldn't have been nearly as good
If
and
you're recording yourself
impactful.
showcasing behavior that's ugly, that you wouldn't support other people doing, or that you think it would be bad if other people emulated, um, and you release it later without some sort of commentary or framed in a way such that it's meant to be sort of interpreted as satire, then to me it doesn't matter what the intention is, right?
I
Especially
think
considering that his audience, I think, tends to be like younger, more impressionable, and kind of troubled people, typically, in my experience.
I think there's a lot of wounded people in his community. And I was actually one of the people on Advice and Confessions. I was on like the first, I think I was on episode 5 or 6. And shortly after that, I went to therapy. I know he says that tells everybody to go to therapy, but when I heard it,
That's positive.
and
I think that's great. If Mr. Girl convinced you or anybody to like, seek help or something like that for things that they're struggling with, I think that's massively positive.
yeah, he told me that I had a hard time not trying to hold other people's boundaries for them, and then I ended up doing it like a minute later, and he pointed it out to me, and I was like, oh my god, you're absolutely right. I really think you need to go to therapy and talk about that, and that got me going to therapy, and in the last 4 months, really made the best changes I've made in my life probably ever, and still,
I'm glad to hear that.
thank you. Uh, My wife says it was the best thing that's ever happened since she's known me.
Hey, and if she's happy, that's what's important, right, big guy?
It it is. It's funny you called her. You said your lady. That's I have. That's what I call her. I have lady tattooed on my knuckles instead
I
of a
know it was
wedding
like a
ring.
teleprompter. I was just reading off the script.
um, what do you think is the worst takes that he has?
I
Like the
mentioned a
most
couple of them.
harmful.
I gotta be honest, I like didn't, I don't have like an itinerary of all the things he said and done or whatever. I've mentioned a couple things. Yeah, it's mostly like if you're asking me what his problems are, I feel like I've offered criticisms in droves. If this is a thing that you want to go
No, I
over
was thinking,
again,
which thing is the most harmful? Like the singular most harmful thing that you wish if you could just wipe out that thing that he's talking about off of the internet because you think that it's harmful. What would it be?
I'm sorry. Like, yeah, nothing is super recent in my mind for me able to like perform. Like, just
That's fair.
off the top of my head, the idea that like trans people are just confused and need to learn to accept their body or something like that is pretty bad. I think that just demonstrates a misunderstanding of like the problem that people with like severe gender dysphoria are claiming to have. And
I
I don't know what that's like either, right? But I'm
Sure.
not on a soapbox saying that, telling them that they're wrong and that their experience isn't what they're saying it is. If it's bad enough that that the suicide rate is so prevalent, right?
Yeah, I think that's the category which I disagree with him the most. But I also, uh, when I disagree with somebody that strongly about something that I think is important, it's very rare that I think they have the best reasons that I've heard from somebody for disagreeing with me on them. The best motivation. Usually, when I hear somebody say something like that, um, they're usually saying it very clearly and unabashedly out of hate. Like I don't like them. Like why can't they just act normal? See some really nasty, horrible things that get a lot worse than what I just said. And it didn't seem like it came from that place. And I'm
Oh,
and I'm
you know
always the
what?
what?
I can think of the worst thing Max has ever said
Oh,
or the worst thing Max has ever done. Okay?
okay.
He begged Vosh for another conversation. Can you even stomach it? The idea of begging Vosh for another conversation?
I don't like the idea of anybody contributing to Vouch's
Okay.
ego.
Sorry.
You're right. That's definitely up there. Um, but yeah, I don't care when somebody's wrong. You can be wrong all you want. Show me that you have a good reason to be wrong. That's what I expect out of somebody. And I think when it comes to a lot of the trans takes, he's shown me that he has well thought out, well reasoned, well intentioned reasons to be wrong. You're just wrong now. I don't think you're shitty. I just think you're wrong.
Yeah, I don't think Max is a transphobe or like hateful or anything, whatever, right? Like
Yeah.
the people, I think people will extend the definition of transphobe to like try to really fit Max snugly in there or something like that. But I don't think he's disgusted by like trans people or anything like that, or like that he hates them on the basis of being trans or anything like that. It sounds like he just has like an idea that he genuinely thinks is like more helpful or something, and I just think that it's naive and comes from a place of misunderstanding.
Yeah. Um, I I agree. I think the big mistake is thinking that he can understand something that you can't. And if he would admit that he can't, I think he says like even if I couldn't understand, I have to operate based on the assumption that I can understand. Otherwise, I don't know what to do. So I have to do it with my understanding, which I think isn't necessarily correct to do. But I understand that because that would be being wrong for the right reasons in my book,
The
and not
correct
out
answer to
of.
that is that you have to trust people a little bit, and I know that that can be scary. I
I was
think
going to
some
say
people
that.
are really afraid to trust somebody beyond what they can verify and demonstrate. I don't know how many have you ever been in a relationship where you steal your significant other's phone and read their text, or you're tempted to? Or that's like part of the dynamic of your relationship is like wondering what's on her phone, or she's wondering what's on yours, or you guys are taking, or you lock your phone around your significant other for the specific purpose that you don't want them to be able to go through it.
So yes, but here's the thing. My wife and I are poly, and I have always said, and I think a lot earlier on I did, and not, I wouldn't say that it was because I was suspicious. It's because sometimes when you have anxiety, like I know there's nothing there, and I just want to make that voice in my head go away. I don't expect to find anything. I'm not looking malicious, like, oh, I'm gonna get this bitch. It's not like that. It's like, can we please calm the anxious feelings that I have? And every time it happened too, I was like, this was literally brought on by nothing. You were too chill, you were too relaxed, and your anxiety said, hey, we have to be freaking out about something. But we've always had open phone policy. Like she can grab my phone every, and I've even told you, even if you want to do it when like I'm asleep,
Sure.
so you
I
don't know that I
listen.
did it, you don't have to tell me. Um,
Yeah, you don't have to tell me
yeah,
about
I
like
get
all the
that.
dynamics of your relationship, but you know that
Well, you
feeling, right?
asked. Yeah,
Yeah, sure. You know I asked if you like understand. Yeah, I guess I did ask have you ever been in this situation or whatever. But yeah, like you
yeah,
know the feeling of being suspicious of somebody and how powerless that can make you feel and like how scary that is that you don't know for sure. But you're suspicious. And especially when it comes to a significant other, when this is a person with whom you're supposed to operate on the most trust out of anybody else on the planet. There's
yeah,
kind of a contradiction there. And like I think that can be the case. I think that's where a lot of blank phobia comes from, right? Whatever type of phobia it is that people just like get really, really afraid of the idea that this is a little bit abstract, but get really scared of the idea that like other people have experiences that are just completely, completely foreign to you because it like kind of makes you feel alone and it makes us feel less connected as human beings in that way. And you kind of have to like sit with that discomfort of, oh fuck, like I am me and this is all I am. And I see all these other people and we can connect and communicate and all this stuff. But if they're truly having other experiences and I have to operate on like, a degree of trust in literally everything they say, even if they're reporting their life experience, then it means everything is sort of coming through this filter, and it like kind of just it redirects to this like lonely place where you're sitting inside your own head and realizing that everything you're seeing, through a screen, being delivered via your eyes, and that like all these are sounds that you have to evaluate and like trust if you there, on some level you really can't know a lot of this stuff. I think it's just really scary for people. It's hard for a lot of people to get over. I
it's
think
like
that's where some of this like transphobia stuff comes from.
yeah. Even with the phone thing, I know that what I'm how I'm feeling is irrational because, and I think that I think accepting things that you know you can't know uh, has an element of irrationality to it, but you have to do it anyways. Because like I think that your brain doesn't want you to accept something that you know you can't know. I think we're kind of built to try to figure it out anyway.
But the point is like the
But
question was,
you have to let it go and
well,
just
yeah,
trust it, right?
the premise was if I can't like verify that something is true, if I can't connect with somebody and like understand it the way they understand it, I don't know what to do. Right? Max says, I don't know what to do. That's what you're telling me. I haven't heard him say this, but
Yeah,
there
that's
is
the
an
vibe I
answer
get.
for this. There's an answer for this, but it's an uncomfortable answer, right? The what to do is that sometimes you just have to like trust people.
Yeah, yeah, I was agreeing and saying that I
Yeah.
think that it's particularly hard because you feel irrational when you do that.
Yeah.
So I think some
There's
people,
risk.
yeah, can't do it.
There's inherent risk. With trust, there's risk in every situation. There is no trust without risk.
This is true. Um, I only got a couple more for you.
Sure.
Um, so I know you said you've seen the Cuties review.
Oh,
Uh,
I haven't. No, no, I have not
oh,
seen the
I
Cuties
thought you
review.
did. It's funny, and I think that it's a good perspective on such a societally frightening movie. Everybody, I remember when it came out, everybody was super scared of the movie and angry about the movie, and I still haven't seen it. Um,
I watched about the first 20 minutes of it, uh, with some friends in a certain community. Uh,
sure,
and they were like fucking it all up. Okay, the conductor was messing it all up. They first it was in English, then they wanted it in French, and then the subtitles weren't matching up, and then the subtitles were the wrong language, and I was like, "Fuck this, I'm out." Like the movie was ruined for me at that point. But
sure.
I take it on Booksmart's deference. Booksmarts saw the movie, and he was describing it to me, and I think I understand the premise of the movie and exactly what happened with that movie. Is that it's like okay, well, go ahead. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. But suffice to say, I trust that Cuties is not intended to be pedo bait and it's intended to be like a sort of vicarious journey through like a young girl's coming of age and like having to grapple with themes of sexuality and like expectations they're meant to fulfill and shit like that and how that can be uncomfortable, especially coming from like a repressive or conservative household and like the sort of weird conundrums they have to deal with or whatever. Like that sounds really interesting to me, and it does not sound like watch this movie because there's like young girls dancing sexy or something like that. And it's just like seems like a really easy shot for Moist Critical to have taken. But yeah, tell me more about the review.
I think that it was smart for him to put it out that way. I it's unfortunate the way that it was received. The jokes were good, especially if you like the darker humor like I do. I think that's when he did the best of like delivering the jokes and where it was really clear they were, but it also gave some people who made videos about it afterwards, really easy, like
Fodder.
clippable, yeah, clippable, shareable, little bite-sized pieces of fodder to make him look particularly bad. And he even is pretty responsible about it. Like the thing that he had the biggest problem with is that they used actual children. He thinks that the things that they address when they show them being very sexual and then show them being children in the very next frame, they'll be twerking and then they'll be on the bed like playing and eating like fruit snacks to kind of make you see like these are both things happening at the same time to these girls. And I thought it was a good review. I remember showing my roommate, I was like, did you think there was anything wrong with it? Am I crazy when I see this and think that he didn't say anything bad? He's like, no, I think that that was totally normal. Like a good review. So I thought you said that you had seen it earlier. Um, I'd recommend watching it. I want to watch Cuties, but like
I don't like
I
watching
don't
reviews
really
of
I don't
movies that I
really want to
intend to
watch
see.
Cuties.
I intend to see Cuties someday because it actually
Gotcha.
does sound really interesting. Yeah, I don't know. And I feel really bad for the creator of the movie more than anything. But whatever. I don't like watching reviews of movies that I intend to see. And I
That's
don't like
fair.
spoil. You've been in my community, you know, I don't like I don't like to know a character's
Same.
name of a movie
Same.
that I want to see. So
I didn't think that I wanted to see Cuties, and now I think I want to see Cuties, and I just don't. Every time I could, I just don't. So
I like seeing
maybe I
movies
don't
on
want to see it.
recommendation. And Booksmarts gave it as recommendation, so I want to see it. Yeah, that's what it
Yeah,
comes down to.
uh, that's fair enough. I assume that it's probably good. Uh, have you have you listened to the album?
I've heard a couple of Max's songs, yeah.
You never played the whole thing on Spotify? You audiophile, you?
I don't like hip hop. I'm racist.
Uh, I I'm actually a big fan of the album too. Surprise, surprise. And the funny thing is, I put subwoofers in my car about a month ago. Two of his songs have the like bangingest bass out of like anything. Like it shakes my vehicle harder. Uh, them subs work the hardest on "Hey Cuties" and oh man, I can fantasize about whatever I want. Just shakes my rear view mirror goes insane. And when you first get subs in, that's what you're really looking for is like how far can I
Listen,
push these things? And
I
that
don't
was the
like hip hop,
ones.
but I think Max is a good rapper. And I don't know, like I'm not a fan of hip hop, but I think Max's music is good and it's fun to listen to.
I think if somebody didn't like Mr. Girl and said they thought he was a bad rapper, I wouldn't be able to trust their opinion on like art without them being knowing that it was going to be heavily skewed by how they feel emotionally about the artist at that point. Yeah, I expected it to be bad. When I found out, I was like, all right, we'll check this out. I was like, oh, it's good. Oh, it's really good. I like that a lot. So I was curious if you had, because I never heard you talk about it, but you talk a fair bit about music.
I had like a hip hop period where I was into like the aftermath stuff. And yeah, I don't know. I can't even listen to that stuff anymore. I've listened to a lot of music that I can't listen to now. I've listened to a lot of bad music too. So yeah.
I fell out of rap for a long time, and creeped its way back into me. For like most of my 20s, rap was super cringy. Don't come near me with it. Don't play it by me. No rap, no country. And now it's listen to a lot more rap than I'd probably like to be honest. Oh, I slipped this one in the towards the end here. Uh do you think I wanted this confrontation with you? Do you think you could beat me in Mortal Kombat?
Probably not in
Felt
Mortal
like game I
Kombat.
spit. Okay.
It really depends. What do you play, MKX or do you play 11?
Now, I'm not as good at 11. I am an absolute god at MKX. Uh,
Okay.
I put my credentials in your Discord before. Did you see them?
No, I sure didn't.
I was in the top 1,000 and ranked on PlayStation with a 64% win rate of like almost 1,000 games in.
That's honestly really good for MKX. That's 64% is
I,
crazy for MKX. That's a hard game.
I said I'm a god at it. I had one friend who would just come over, play like 8 hours a day, spam everybody's stupid bullshit till I knew everybody's kit.
Yeah, no, you would absolutely be destroy me in MKX, no problem. I mean,
I think,
like, that's a game that I own and I messed around with it a little bit, and it's hard. I remember playing with it and be like, wow, this game is a lot harder than I thought it would be. It's a good hard game.
especially coming from 9, which was kind of a slow and clunky Mortal Kombat, to really fast paced.
I actually think 9 was like pretty fast too, but yeah, X is faster. I think.
When I went back to 9, it was very blocky and slow. Like last year, I tried playing with my friends. Like this is terrible.
Okay, then 11 must feel like fucking Minesweeper to you or something.
Yeah, 11. I thought 11 was really slow at first, and I'm like, oh, this is actually faster than 10 now.
Really?
It has a different flow from 10 that makes it feel slow when you're learning things, because some of the things will work on a slower input, but everything that matters you can match really fast. So it's like a really weird like bell curve of like this game's slow, this game's slow. Holy shit, everything is so lightning fast. It makes sense why they have perfect blocks in this game. And I think I really want to get better at it. I streamed it for a little bit, but I don't know. I think I just have a hard time not having that buddy to come over to like training mode. Let's go. Let's get good at this game. We're both gonna get great at this together. Playing with randos online, it's a lot harder to focus in on certain aspects of the character and really get them down. And the training dummy can only do so much too. You need somebody with a good understanding to help you get there. Do you think that's the same with Tekken? That like playing online is great, but if you have somebody who has a good understanding and
Okay,
can
Tekken,
discuss
you
what's
need a
happening?
Sherpa. You need a Sherpa. You absolutely need a guide for Tekken. Yeah, there's no way you're gonna figure out everything on your own.
Yeah, when you were talking about all the little things, I'm like yelling at my computer last night or the night before. Like yeah, I 100% understand. I'm not even gonna start. Tekken has a lot of really subtle things to when you can and can't attack. It's nonsense.
Yeah, it's very unintuitive as well. That's why you need somebody to explain a lot of things. Sure.
Yeah, you usually can't punch people in the middle of combos in other fighting games, and that alone adds a whole layer of nonsense. Oh, I actually did ask you that one too.
We get it all done.
Um, no, I just had to read through two of them because you sort of naturally answer them through the conversation. I mentioned it earlier, and I'm not sure if you addressed it, so I'll come back to this. I really think that he's one of the most influential people in this circle, like in this space, in that when he does something, it seems like it sends ripples through the entire community. It's like the Real Doll review, that was everywhere for like way longer than it should have been, I think. Just based on like when somebody puts out a big video, maybe it's like usually lasts a couple of days and on to the next cycle. That one lasted minimum a week. And the uh the Dr. K thing, that was one of the largest like taking over Twitch arcs I've seen. And I've been on like watching Twitch politics stuff for like 5 years. That was massive. So yeah, I think even if people don't agree with him, I think he's creating conversation in a way that I haven't seen anybody else do. I think that there's might be some people that are better at discussing the things that are big in a way that reaches a lot more people. But it it's like he has a magic hammer and he can just hit it on the side of Twitch politics and social commentary sphere to where everybody feels it and they have to say something. They either have to like push against it as hard as they can, or at the very least, you have to talk about it. It's like you can't escape what he's doing.
Yeah, I think he's influenced the topics. I think to call somebody influential, typically the way that I would interpret that is meaning that their ideas get adopted by others. So I don't think he's necessarily influential in that way. I think he mostly gets a lot of like criticism for a lot of his ideas. But certainly, there is also the effect of like whatever happens on Destiny's stream and ended up being this whole space was built out of Destiny's community. And
Yes.
like there's a lot of overlap with the communities. And I think there's, a Destiny effect of whatever happens on Destiny's stream ends up being what we talk about, us bottom feeders, for the next week or two or something like that. But sure, even among things that Destiny was doing at the time, yeah, some of the Mr. Girl discourse ends up like overriding that a little bit. Although I feel like the real doll stuff on Twitch, I think since Destiny and Mr. Girl are gone on Twitch now, not I don't think he ends up sort of like setting the pace for any topics on Twitch necessarily, but certainly he's a big personality that you know, makes big splashes. Sure.
Uh, yeah, I would say so too. Yeah, because it's that's one of the things that gets me too. Like they're gone, and well, for this purpose, like Mr. Girl, it's not even on Twitch, and it's still
Were people
like
talking about that on Twitch?
yeah,
I
yeah.
honestly
That's what I'm
didn't see
saying.
it.
We're talking about it right now.
Well, I mean, you brought it up, but yeah, I'm.
Well,
I was gone for a month,
tell
so
me.
maybe people were talking about it on Twitch.
Oh,
Maybe I
the
just
real
missed it.
doll review?
Mhm.
Oh, yeah, it's been really, really big. In fact, I was supposed to talk to a friend of mine who deals with her job for a period of time was to go out and assist women that had been abused, either physically or sexually. And her primary job was a consent counselor for colleges. She would give presentations on consent, and I did a stream with her a long time ago. It's like one of my favorite things that I had done in like the last 5 years, with like streaming with as much effort as I could muster to put into it. And I sent her the video, and she goes, "I shouldn't be, but I'm watching this during class." And because I guess she gets like breaks on the tuition or whatever. So she's been going to school
I've
for
heard
a
a lot
long, long
about that
time.
video. Yeah, I've heard a lot about that video. I personally haven't seen it. Yeah, I don't know.
And whereas I thought she was going to initially be very, very upset about it, she's all I got out of her, and I still don't know what she thinks because she's been super busy since. We just have to reschedule. This challenged my ideas about abuse more than anything else has. I'm paraphrasing, but that's what she said had meant. And I was like, oh, okay, I think we're going to have a really good conversation. I don't know what that means, but I kind of told her how I felt about it. And I had a lot of conversations with a lot of people about it. And I think it's pretty dividing. I think just watch the last half hour. You don't need to see all the other stuff. That's not what I mean, the whole thing is fine, but I would encourage you to watch the conversation between him and Shaylin more than I would encourage you to watch him have sex with the doll. I think that's the more important thing is the conversation at the end.
Listen, in for a penny, in for a pound, okay? If I'm going in, I'm diving in. He made it one contiguous piece of content to be, you know,
Well,
consumed in one piece. So,
do you want my little life hack for watching it all the way through then?
sure.
Window it on your computer so that way you can just drag the window down like this much so that way you don't have to
You know,
see
I was actually thinking
the
of
whole time.
blindfolding myself and just going, "I'm not gay. I'm not gay" through the whole part.
Well,
Yeah, I don't know.
because like I watched
I
like the
don't want to
first
see a
20 minutes of
wiener.
it. Well, that's
Mhm.
not the thing. Like when you watch somebody all the time, like there's some sense of parasociality going on. They're like, all right, I seen it, and like I can watch the rest of this without seeing it. Like I think I made it about 15, 20 minutes, and I was like, okay, I know what it looks like. I can fill in the rest. We're just gonna drag it down now. It's not like
Listen, I'm probably not gonna. I'm sorry. That's just not the thing that I'm interested in. Like, I've heard that the reason to watch it is because he's like really mean to Shaylin. I just don't care. Like, I
well, I
don't.
don't think he was. I was
Okay,
I think you would have an interesting take on it because some people think he was being abusive and some people think that she was being abusive, and I think that there's bad things happening on both ends, and it's just a lot more nuanced than people who get really really mad about it like to say. That's why I'm surprised that you didn't see it because you're a critical thinker, and usually when people are shouting one like very loudly on both sides, you can kind of parse out why both sides are being a little ridiculous.
that discourse is dead now. You know what I mean? Nobody seems to want to care about it. I'm not that interested. I just don't see a reason to revisit it. Yeah. Sorry.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Hey.
Probably not gonna see it.
Like I said, but I'm not trying to convince you of anything really here. Other than I just wanted you to know that I thought you should watch it. Oh, do you think that he's playing a character?
Well, sometimes I listen. All the world is but a stage, and we are merely players. You
Any
know,
more than
even these.
anybody is on a daily basis.
Okay. I feel like this is the best answer I can give to this.
Okay.
Do you remember long ago during the were you around during the N-word Andy arc?
uh, I prefer to refer to this as the Destiny N-word saga, but sure.
Sure. Okay. Um, do you remember that thing where Destiny like did that whole stream where he's like, "Nothing I do is theatrical" or something like that. "Nothing I do is performative," I think is what he said. I actually don't think that that's true. I like I understand what he meant by that, which is that like he doesn't say things for the sake of he doesn't say things he doesn't believe for the sake of being like received optically, I think is what Destiny meant for that. But
Sure.
even like that delivery is like performative in a way, is theatrical in a way. And certainly Destiny's an entertainer, right? Every time that he talks about a subject, there's a little bit of theater in his voice. The intonation of his voice, rises and falls so that it's more interesting over time or whatever. He puts more emphasis on certain words. To that extent, we're all a little bit performative. We're all a little bit theatrical. When Max
Yeah,
tells a joke, he's being performative. He's doing a little bit of a character, right? Anytime we have any action, sometimes, like when I'm doing certain actions, I'm being theatrical. I'm playing a different character depending on how I want to be received by the people that are listening to me, right? I think that's true for everybody. Now, if you're asking me if Max is doing things and saying things that he doesn't actually believe just for the purpose of like provoking the audience or something like that, I
yeah.
no, I don't think he is.
I guess the better way to put it is, do you think that there's a Mr. Girl as a character and Max as a person who plays Mr. Girl on camera? That would be like a good way to, I think, to word
No,
it.
I don't think so.
Okay. Now, that's been a lot more popular of an idea that like it's being pushed by a lot of people with voices, is that like Mr. Girl is the character that Max is playing.
I wish that were the case, personally.
Oh,
I would not have been so disappointed by certain conversations he's had if that was the case.
I'm
If it
of the
was like a brilliant piece of performance art.
it would be right. He would be a phenomenal actor, right?
Maybe
If that was the case.
I have a different relationship with
Oh,
what it means to be I'm studying theater. So, the
sh-
skills that go into that. Maybe he could be.
well, I agree. There's a lot of skill that goes into it. So I guess I think I said on Sunday when I talked to Chud that if you think that he's acting that well, that consistently, that true to character on every single stream, you should be mad that he's not, that he's here on uh, YouTube and doing content like this instead of being in movies, because that kind of dedication to a character would make some really good fucking movies. And that's method acting taken really, really far, but I think we get some good movies out of that.
Yeah, I think so.
Um, that's pretty much it. I have one thing I wanted to say to you outside of that's all it for Mr. Girl. But I'm gonna say that I have pissed off more people by giving your Dark Souls take that you tweeted than probably anything else in my friend group in like the last 5 years.
The
And
best thing about that is that I don't even feel that strongly about it, and I just, like I think that's classical trolling, right? If you say something that it's kind of a passing thought that you have, but it, like, upsets a bunch of people, yeah.
yeah, and I like Dark Souls enough to where I can defend it better than they can be outraged by it, even though I don't wholeheartedly agree with that. But I do. Dark Souls 1 is my favorite video game ever. Uh, and it's okay if you don't agree with that. But you say Dark Souls 1 if you like level design?
Dark Souls 1 if you like Dark Souls.
Oh, sure. Uh,
Maybe it
I,
was Dark Souls 1 if you like level design. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it is been a
Yeah.
masterpiece of crafting a whole world out of like this much. Have you ever seen it like put into like one little glob?
Yes. Looks like it can fill a cup. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Dark Souls 1,
genius.
the world is the main character. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Otherwise, just uh, thank you for giving me a lot of critical things that I needed for this, and uh, thanks for being you, man. You're usually my go-to late night when I'm too lazy to type to chat or I'm in bed so I can't talk shit in the audience. But just know that even when I'm not, you'll know when I'm there. I know you know when I'm here at my computer, but when I'm not, I'm still watching.
Do you fall asleep to the sound of my voice? Is that what you're telling me?
Sometimes, if you're not on, I usually put on like a I'll put on like a Mr. Girl video that I've missed or something. And for a while, my wife would be like, "Hey, it's okay if you do that, but could you try to change it before you fall asleep so that way I don't have to wake up to it?" And like I understand that. Or if if I have like a Mr. If I have like a Mr. Girl thing, and she's like, "Hey, if anything's gonna happen here, that's going off. Like you can put on anything else. You can put on Adventure Time, whatever." I'm like, well, yeah, okay. Um, I guess I wanted to leave you with that, and I really genuinely hope that I can play a fighting game with you sometime. Hopefully some middle ground. Maybe MK11 is the middle ground because I'm not even half the Titan I am at 10.
Well, listen, Street Fighter 6 is coming out.
I hope it's good. I'm really Restriever's really hit or miss for me.
Yeah, I mean that tends to be how it goes. It's a pretty hit or miss series.
So yeah, I'm sure I'm gonna check it out. It's a major one. People are gonna bug me to play it.
All right.
Oh,
Well,
oh, I'm sorry. I would like to tell you the thing that I like the least about Mr. Girl. Because you were actually critical, so I would like to be critical. One thing I hate so much that the fighting game that he's trying to get like really good at is Smash. I hate when people take Smash seriously. It's the fucking Mario Party of fighting games, and I'm not saying that it doesn't take skill, that they
listen.
don't bust their ass to get good
I
at
want to
it.
fight with you about this. I want to fight with you about this. I I think that's an antiquated mentality. I think fighting game people were wrong to ever think that about Smash, especially if he's playing Melee. I think that is one of the hardest games of all time.
It's
I respect
ultimate.
the fuck. Sure. Either way, I think Smash is definitionally a fighting game. Okay, I think it carries over a lot of the same skills between it and other fighting games. Um, I think one of the worst things the fighting game ever did was like excise Smash, like something that actually offered
Oh
something new, like a new formula to the fighting game sort of formula. And like yeah, it's the reason that fighting games became stagnant.
no, I don't. Well, I think I do a good job at the end of that in saying that I whenever somebody wants to play, they want to play it with items off. When I play Smash, I want to have fun. When I play Mortal Kombat, when I play Tekken, if I play Street Fighter, I want to fucking kick some ass. I want to make you feel bad. I want to make you feel like you were stupid for playing against me. That's what I want. When I play Smash, I want to throw Pokeballs at you. I want to pop trophies. And nobody ever wants to fucking do that. That's the one fighting game that we have that we can chill, and it's silly. It's fun. And like I said, I know that it takes a lot of skill. That's why I try to give that credit. I know people bust their ass to get really good at it and figure out counters and all of that. Cool. But it ruins the experience of having a fun casual fight because as soon as you want to play Smash, at least one person in the room is gonna fuck everybody over because that's all they do is grind Smash. Like, why can't we have one fun game that people aren't gonna take seriously that people like in the mainstream? That to me that was always Super Smash Bros.
I feel
And
like the overwhelming majority of people, that's how they're playing Smash Bros. Though it's
that's
just not
why
the
I don't like
competitive
this.
scene.
Oh, I hang out with nerds, and that's probably my problem. We always got a
Yeah.
couple Smash players hanging out, and it's just can't just be silly and have. I can't just watch Pikachu beat up Mario and laugh whether I win or lose, because somebody's sweaty in the room, you know. And so, I it'd just be really cool if that wasn't the main one, because I know he loves Mortal Kombat. Give me the Mortal Kombat stories, Max.
Yeah. Maybe you can win him over on that one. Good
I
luck and
I don't
Godspeed.
think so. You too, man. I appreciate you having me on.
Have a good day. Thanks.
You too. Thank you.